All right. So for those of you keen observers, I was playing in one area using one pattern. And this one pattern is the pattern we're going to be using for an entire 10 weeks. Now, also, if you were listening, you noticed that even though I was stuck there, stuff wasn't all that uninteresting. It was actually kind of interesting. There's a lot you can do with this one pattern. And I was playing it down here. It's A major or F sharp minor. We'll get more on that later. But here is the pattern we're going to be using for the next 10 weeks. I'm going to play it. It's going to sound like A minor. I'm going to play it off the 5th fret. A lot of you watching know that already, know that scale already. So, what are we going to do for 10 weeks just in that area? Well, we're going to play over several different tracks. We're going to approach it a different way every week. So this week is really about getting it under our fingers, practicing in a variety of tempos, practicing it using different techniques, and then I've got a couple sequences, simple sequences that you can practice and really get the scale up and down in your fingers if you haven't already. Even if you know it, odds are you're going to take away something cool today in terms of how to practice it from a memory sort of point of view. Now, we're also going to take a look at sequencing in a different way in the following weeks. We're going to break it down string by string. We're going to look at adding different techniques. We're going to look at phrasing ideas, using different techniques to yield certain sounds. And I mean, there's so many genres that play in the pentatonic scale, and so many genres that use this exact pattern to get their message across. So we're going to break it down one string at a time, then two strings at a time, lots of different sequences. We're going to look at chords that naturally lie within this pattern and how to play chordally, leads chordally. We're going to look at adding notes to this scale. We're going to use this scale pattern as a basis for playing modally. We're going to look at how you can change this pattern and use it in a major and a minor context. We're going to show you how to develop licks and develop a style using nothing more than this pattern. The thing to realize, and the longer I play guitar, the more I realize that less is more. And I know that sounds incredibly cheesy and overused, but you don't need to know a lot to create great music. You know, I was just listening to some unplugged stuff by one of my favorite songwriters. His name is John Foreman, on the way over here today. And it's so simple. I mean, it's 3 chords and singing, with, a little ditty here and there. Some of my favorite guitar lines are, especially recently, they're only a couple notes, but they're played in such a way that they stick in your mind, that they are memorable, that they groove. So the times of really woodshedding and playing, 1,000 notes a minute, not everybody can do that, and not everybody wants to listen to it. So this particular series, while we are going to work on our technique and we're going to work on playing some stuff up to tempo, we're going to really focus on using a little bit and getting a lot out of it. So, before we dive into reviewing again this pentatonic position, looking at some tablature, and working on some sequences, how's everybody doing? Is the forum working?
The forum is a little bit overloaded,
Okay.
but if people want to head over to live stream, they can actually chat on the live stream forum there. It's livestream.com/JamPlay, and we can get their messages through that forum.
And is there any feedback yet? We know if people are tracking?
Hello.
Hello. Oh, okay. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and break out the tab. And we'll review the scale position. And then we'll start looking at the sequences. All right. We start on the 5th fret. This is for, we're going to look at this as A minor for now. So if you know this chord, two notes per string. 5, 8, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7. So what's neat about it is after this one, you've got 3 strings in a row where you've got 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7. 5, 8, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7. Then 2 5 8s. 2 notes per string. It's extremely easy to memorize. Let's see it down. Again. Five, 8, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 8. Sorry, those last two were 5, 8. 5, 8, 5, 8. So, after learning that sequence, here's the first thing we want to do. We want to take it to tempo. And we just want to get familiar practicing at different tempos. The first step to making music with anything that you learn or anything that you know is playing it to rhythm. 70 beats per minute. Quarter notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you already know, you should be playing right along with me. Eighth notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3. Here we go. Notice the way it's accented. Make it as musical as you can, even though we're just playing one pattern to a click. But with 16th notes, feel like it's 70 beats per minute. 1 E and a 2 E and a da 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 da. once you're comfortable at that tempo, consider taking it up a little bit and practicing. You don't have to practice each subdivision extensively, but we want to get good and comfortable with playing it cleanly at a variety of different tempos. So let's bump it up 10 beats per minute, and we'll do this with some of the sequencing too. If there are any questions or comments, I'm certainly open to entertaining. If you have, if there's anything.
We're good so far. I do want to just say again, if you're having trouble logging on to the JamPlay chat, you could head over to livestream.com/JamPlay, and you can get on the JamPlay live stream chat over on the live stream website.
All right. 80 beats per minute. Do it once at quarter notes just to get familiar with the... Internalize that tempo. Eighth notes. Sixteenth notes. Okay. Anybody actually playing along with me or trying at these tempos? This is the way that you want to practice this week. Get good and comfortable with this particular scale pattern, because we're going to spend 10 weeks really making as much music with this as we possibly can.
Got a quick question from Lucas here.
Hi, Lucas.
And the question is this lesson also suitable for a fingerstyler?
Yeah, I mean, it is. I'm not going to be teaching fingerstyle. I'm going to be using a pick. But fingerstyle players need to know this scale as well and can make a lot of music. It's going to require a bit of porting, because some of the things that I'm talking about are going to be stuff that a fingerstyler wouldn't necessarily do. But I mean, knowing and being familiar with the positioning, especially when we get into the chords within the shape, that's going to be handy. And fingerstylers need to learn how to play single note sequences also. So it's really going to be a good workout for your left hand. You're going to have to make some assumptions about what you're doing with the right hand, and sort of adapt it to what you do with your right hand. But this stuff certainly is going to be usable for you.
And then just a couple of comments. People I think are having a little bit of trouble with the 16th notes.
Yeah,
a little bit too fast.
Yeah.
Wondering if they can drop the tempo down. How does that work? Is that an okay thing to do?
Oh, geez, yeah. Only go as fast as you can play cleanly. You know, I felt like I was able to play pretty cleanly at 80. But let's, this is what I do when I'm practicing something that, if I'm trying to work it up to tempo. 80 was fine. Let's go up to something that I know I probably can't do. Let's do, like 120 maybe, and I'm not going to be able to do that cleanly. I'll try a few more times. Yeah, it's difficult. So So that's a little too fast for me to play cleanly, and it was stupid of me to go all the way up there. I probably can do it, but I need to work up, because there were times where I was hitting it, but it wasn't good. It wasn't clean. So what I need to do is work up to that speed, and then I need to make sure that I'm playing cleanly in intervals. So, I'll go down to 100, and I'll try it again. And this, your numbers might be different, but this is how you want to approach it. We'll do eighth notes first at 100. So 16th notes feel pretty good there, now that I've gotten into the groove. That's 100. Feels good. Okay, let's push it. Let's push it up to like 105. Again, I got to be clean. If I'm not clean, and if I'm not able to play with accent and intentionality, I'm probably going too fast. There's no right speed. The right speeds are the ones that you can be musical with. Eighth notes. 105. Pretty good. So sometimes you might catch yourself tensing up, which I'm doing a little bit there. Well, back off a little bit and shake it off. Loosen up. Okay. I think I'm feeling comfortable. So what I would do is I would push. I would go up to 110. If that was feeling a little weird, I'd shake it off and go back to 105. If I was succeeded at 105 or 110 and I felt good about how it sounded and how it felt, then I'd go up to 110, 115, and I'd try to push up to that goal tempo. But if at the end of my practice session I still can't play at 120 cleanly, well, it's okay. It's only one practice session, right? But I can't stress enough, just like I was saying at the very beginning, playing fast is certainly not the goal of this course, and it really shouldn't be your goal at all. It should be able to make music with it. And we're only practicing this way, not because we want to shred through the pentatonic scale, but because we want to be comfortable enough with the position that we can play what's in our heads. And we're going to work a lot about putting things in our heads that we can translate to our fingers. So don't beat yourself up too much about how fast you can play the scale. That was a very long answer. Any other questions or comments?
We are caught up at the moment.
Cool. All right. Let's take a look at our two sequences. And we're going to do sort of the same sorts of things with these sequences that we just did with the scale itself. So the first sequence is right after the scale on the tab. 5, 7. So this is the end of sequence 1, sequence 2. So we need to go to the first page. Yeah, sequence 1 starts there. So we got 5, 8, 5, 7, 5, 7, but notice we don't change strings. We stay on the A string longer. And you can see the pattern that goes all the way up. 5, 8, 5, 7. Then we repeat that again. Then we repeat it again. And then again. 5, 8, turn the page. You see that? Let's go back to the other page real quick. It makes more sense when you play it with some rhythm to it. I'll play it in straight eighth notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and down. So it's kind of this group of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. It's a nice rhythmic sequence. Let me play it a few more times slowly, but I wanted you to get the flow of it. It's a really nice feel. Again. All right. So this is going to be sort of a precursor to what we'll be doing in the following weeks, where we're not just playing it up and down all the time. We're learning how to play with portions of the scale. If you get comfortable doing something like this, it's going to make working within a particular area of the scale easier because you won't be thinking of the scale in a completely linear way. So let's take this sequence to the track or to the click. We're going to go 70 beats per minute again. It's a good, comfortable starting tempo for most. And there I did it at 16th notes at 70 beats per minute. is sequence 1. And we're going to go up in tempo. We're going to try the same thing we did before. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Yep, we got a few questions here.
Okay, cool.
All right, let's see here. First question is, when do you use hammer-on versus striking every note or picking every note?
Good question. So you can tell I'm being incredibly inconsistent with that. There's really no rule. Ideally, you want to be able to play, you want to be able to do either, and then do whichever one you feel like. You know, like when I'm going through that again, you know, especially when I would go up to 16th notes, sometimes I'd pick the whole thing. And then other times I would do something like that, where I'd only pick, you know, one note and let the hammer-ons and pull-offs phrase. You know, it accents differently. It feels differently. You know, this sounds much more musical to me than this. Well, that sounded fine. They both sound good. You know, you can picking versus hammer-ons and pull-offs. It's a vehicle to express yourself, right? So, like, if I throw a little bit of the delay on there real quick. You know, I've got a little bit of gain, and I want to do, you know, something like this. Maybe I palm mute pick on the way up, you know. That's weird delay. Turn that delay off. Too much delay. There we go. Maybe I palm mute on the way up. Maybe I hammer on the way up and pick on the way down. Oh, play right. You know, so there's a lot of different ways that you can attach feel and emotion by using your pick, and you should practice both. If you notice, when I started speeding it up, sometimes my goal would be to pick the whole thing, and other times it would be to use legato, use more legato. You know, so if we go up in tempo, you want to be able to practice. You want to be able to do both. And you want to be able to do both comfortably, and let it sort of flow out of you. Don't say that you always have to pick it or always have to use legato. You know. Good question, though. Next question.
Next one is from Lane Katz, and Lane's question is, I am a beginner and do not know scales. Is there any place that I should start?
This is a great place to start. Learn this pentatonic pattern, and take it slow, just like we did at the very beginning. This is one of the most fundamental guitar scales you can ever learn, and if you learn this, even playing it slowly. You don't have to do it quickly. You don't have to sequence it. You don't have to do any of the things that we're doing. If you just learn that first line of tab, that first thing that we did at the very beginning, and you can play that up and down, that's a great place to start learning scales. Absolutely. And, you know, even if you're playing it like this, without a click. Super slow. There's still music there. this scale is easy enough in its fundamental nature to learn for a beginner. Next question.
Next question is from Graham. And the question is, in his alternate picking, he always starts with a downstroke, whether going up or down in the scale. I find it easier to pick upwards when moving down the scale. Does it matter?
No. And you should be able to do all of it, because different licks in the future are going to require you to do different things. If you want to pick down or pick up, see, to me, that when you pick and you do alternate picking and you start picking up on the way down, you have this awkward inside string thing, which Paul Gilbert sometimes talks about. Like that's hard to deal with. Watch, if you look at this hand real closely. Oops. You've got this inside string thing going on, and that happens whether you're going up or down on the pentatonic scale, because it's 2 notes per string. That's why I find it easier, because if you're alternate picking, you're always going down. You're always going down when you're switching strings. But you should be able to do it both ways. That was just the way that Graham described it, where I'm picking up instead of down when I start. That's definitely more difficult for me, but I can still do it. And there's going to be times, when you're doing stuff where you're going to have to pick up because it makes the most sense. And you're just going to have to do it. So practicing all forms, that's why we're only working with this one thing, because we want to, all these other questions, this is great. This is exactly what I wanted to happen. These questions are coming up because we're dealing with a small amount of information, right? How can we play this well? How can we play it efficiently? Very good question.
Okay, next question is from Ted. And Ted's question is, are we going to discuss chords in the pentatonic scale?
Yes, we certainly are. It is week 3. Chords within the shape. We're going to be doing all that stuff. And that might be one of my favorite lessons of the 10 weeks, because that's where you really start to make some music. All sorts of cool opportunities just within this shape to play chords and the scale together. So yes, we are.
Okay, and the next question is from SRV Texas. And the question is, do you still use alternate picking while doing hammer-ons and pull-offs?
That's a good question. Well, no. Yes and no. Let me play slowly with hammer-ons and pull-offs. So I'll only pick one note per string. The rest of it's going to be, and I'll just play the scale for now, and then I'll play that sequence. So downstroke, downstroke, down, 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 down. Or down, 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 up. So you can see I'm not using alternate picking there. But if I was planning on using some alternate picking within a sequence like this, something like that, where I'm... Let me play something good. You see, I'm using alternate picking where appropriate, but I'm letting this hand sort of dictate the phrasing, and then this guy is complementing. So I'm not making a rule that I'm not using alternate picking, but I'm not making a rule that I am using alternate picking. I am comfortable enough with alternate picking at whatever tempo so that if I want to use it, I can call it out and play it and play with it. That's the goal with technique practicing. You want to be able to bring it out when you need it because you want to do something musical, but not necessarily have to use it. So if it makes more musical sense for you to do all upstrokes on the way down, something like that, it might, Maybe you're doing a little sequence up here. Something like that, and it makes more sense to do upstrokes. There, I'm picking, I'm doing that. So alternate picking doesn't work that well for that. Whereas something like this, where I'm using a little bit of alternate picking and then I'm using some hammer-ons and pull-offs because I want that accent at the top. I want that percussion up there. If I didn't have that, it would sound like this. It would sound messy. It sounds much better with that, So picking, it's an art. It's not just mechanics. Good, very good questions.
Okay, and the next one is from Packin' Roo, if I'm saying that right. And this question is, will we look at the blues scale note?
Yes, we will. We are inserting the blue note in week 8 and week 10. We are working on the blue note. We're also going to work on the blues scale note. We're going to work on chromaticism within the pentatonic position, and we're going to work modally. So we're not. I say that, and everybody drops their guitars and turns off their computers and runs away. What that really means is we're going to insert one note a week into these. So you might deal with just this note. And then we'll discuss, what is that note? What sounds does it free you up to make? What kinds of chord progressions can you play over when you insert that note? Why does that note work? So we're going to be doing that a lot. And we're going to do that with a bunch of other notes too. That's one of them. The blue note is another one. Major and minor thirds we're going to be using. And then, of course, chromaticism in general is week 10. We're going to be doing a lot of chromaticism. And if you want, you can pop on over to JamPlay.com, and the entire outline is listed. Granted, it doesn't. Some of them are intentionally kind of vague. So these are good questions. But we're going to be experimenting with inserting different sounds into this. This is sort of our car, and we're going to be putting different things in the car for our own enjoyment over the next 10 weeks.
Okay, one more here.
Mm-hmm.
This question is, do we learn some theoretical background about pentatonics?
Yes. You're going to learn quite a bit in starting next week. We're going to be doing that. But we're going to, starting with week 3, 4, every week, there's going to be a little bit of theory, except this week. There's going to be a little bit of theory behind it that's going to help you identify what the names of the tones are. A big question that a lot of people have is, why are there different notes in the major pentatonic than there are the minor pentatonic? And the standard answer for a lot of people is, well, just look at the black keys on the piano and that'll explain it. But I'm going to go into more detail as to why that is. And the short answer, and we'll talk about it more, is that it really is the pentatonic scale. It's not the major pentatonic scale or the minor pentatonic scale, although people use those phrases. It's the pentatonic scale. And it can be used, depending on how you implement it and what you're playing over, it can be used as a major sound or as a minor sound. So there's your little bit of theory for today. It's not the major or minor pentatonic scale. It's just the pentatonic scale. And that's, some of you, that already makes sense a little bit. Maybe some of you are going, what? I've never really heard it that way. It's going to make sense, and it's going to be freeing. When I was growing up playing guitar and taking lessons, at one point I thought that I had to learn entirely different positions for the major pentatonic versus the minor pentatonic scale. And it was overwhelming at first. And then when I started learning the patterns, I was like, wait a minute. It's all the same thing. And when you start understanding very fundamental things about the major scale, which we'll go over, you start to see how cool this is. So, and how easy it is to understand and implement. So, yep, good question.
Okay, next one is from AbleFam3. Is it always critical to use number 3 finger on a 5/7 for the 7 note? I'm assuming that's a fret. Frets 5 and 7.
Yeah. Right now when we're practicing this, you should be using the fingering that I'm using. You could do something like this, where you're using your pinky maybe, or really you want to be able to use any finger at any time, right? So it would actually be a great idea to practice it sometimes using the fingering that you should be able to use the fingering I've been using, which is 1 finger per fret, 4 fret grouping. But you want to be able to do stuff like this, right? That was horrible. You want to be able to reach a little bit. Up here, it may be more comfortable. Notice I'm doing different fingerings based on what I want to do. So there, I'm using my 1, 3, and then 2. If I'm not comfortable doing that, then when I want to play something that my ears tell me I want to play, my hand can't keep up, that's going to happen all the time anyway. It just happened to me there at the very beginning of that little sequence. But the goal is you want to be able to be flexible enough with your fingering that your hand doesn't get in the way with what your ear wants to hear, if that makes sense. So practice it like this, and then practice it like this. And then practice it up here with some different fingerings. Totally okay to move this around. Okay.
Okay, we got time for a few more here.
Sure.
Next one is from Starman4, and wanting to know if you'll be using backing tracks to aid in the exercises.
This week, we will not be using backing tracks. You will be playing to a metronome. Every other week, I want to say, we have backing tracks that we will be using, especially when we get to playing, adding the notes and showing you how to play over, showing you how to implement it. So yeah, there's a lot of tracks. I believe every other week has a track. Almost every other week has a track. So yeah, and that's really important. In all the live courses that we do here, we try to take it to real music as quickly as possible. So playing to real music, playing to tracks is key, and we'll make sure and do a lot of that.
Okay, next one is from Margaret. And the question is, would it help to try and increase my speed by doing any independent handwork like picking without using my other hand?
No. Speed increase comes as a function of being comfortable and confident where you're at, and then pushing by little increments. So, like we were doing earlier, if I can play well at 100 beats per minute comfortably, I can be musical with it, I can choose to alternate pick, I can choose to use legato, but it all sounds good and confident, then I can push it up a little bit to 105 and practice having that same confidence level at 105 that I did at 100. Once I feel that way about 105, I can push it up to 110. And it may not feel that confident, so maybe I need to spend a little bit more time on 105 and then I'll try 110 again, and maybe in a few days, 110 is going to feel just as confident as 100 did. That's how you want to think about speed increases. If you start piecing it out, I think you miss the point, because you want to be able to deliver at whatever speed you're playing. So if you start just doing part of it, yeah, you might get comfortable doing this, 200 beats per minute or whatever, but you're not going to be able to play what you want to play at 200 beats per minute. So take what you're wanting to play, whether it's this sequence, whether it's the scale, whatever it is, and gradually step up.
All right, next question. Is it advisable to use this scale to improvise over jazz progressions?
Yeah, you can use it over jazz progressions. Absolutely. 2-5-1s, modulating 2-5-1s. The key is that you have to learn where to modulate, because jazz modulates quite a bit. But even a lot of jazz is based around major scale theory, and anything that's based around major scale theory, you can use the pentatonic scale. The pentatonic scale is fabulous for working through modulations, and it's, I remember I had a gig several years ago playing for a dinner theater, and we popped open a real book, and after we played the melody for a little bit, we would improvise. We each get turns to improvise, and especially because a lot of that stuff, you don't really know that well. You're just thumbing through the book, and you get to play the chord progression, and then you get to play the melody, and then it's solo. So you don't have a lot of time to prepare. I would use the pentatonic scale almost exclusively sometimes, and you're going to see over the course of the next several weeks that many times that's enough. I mean, many times it sounds fabulous if you phrase with it correctly. You don't need to know tons of different scale patterns. And as we start adding notes in between the notes, you're going to get a good sense for, how you can use the pentatonic scale as a basis. Use the pentatonic scale as a basis for what you're playing. And then add notes that aren't technically in the pentatonic scale. And so you're not playing just in the pentatonic scale. You're using it as a foundation, and then you're playing in Dorian, or then you're playing, the blues, or then you're playing harmonic minor, whatever it is. But you're using this as a framework, something that's familiar. It's like, what's it like? Getting dressed before you go outside. You're putting on something that you're comfortable in, that you're going to be warm enough in, and then you're doing these activities outside, and based on how you're dressed, you're going to be able to do those things better. So after 20 some years of playing, I always use the pentatonic scale as the basis for new sounds. Always.
Okay, next question is from Talos 1975. The question is, this might be something different, but when I learned this scale, it had a D sharp in it on the A and G strings.
You're getting ahead of us. That is the flat 5, and that's a variant of the blues scale. That's one of the very bluesy notes that you. So you're doing that. Now, that's exactly what I was just talking about. I'm using this scale, because we've been playing that all day, right? And I inserted a note, which we'll get there, and we'll spend more time with that. I inserted a note, and it took on a very different personality. And Talos helped sort of drive that point home right there. I mean, that sounded really neat. But we didn't have to learn a whole new scale. We just put another note in.
Okay, and this question is from Tony Johnson. You touched on this a little bit earlier, but do we always need to use a pick?
No. I think with this week, just learning the scale, I'm using a pick, but I use hybrid picking a lot, It's doing something like or if we're doing like sixth, stuff like that, or, I might do like where you're using, a middle finger there. So I'll do stuff like that, and that's great. Again, it's about making music. If you want to use a finger instead of a pick for a certain note because you think it sounds cool, do that and figure out how to work it in. I think a lot of times, playing with your fingertips instead of a pick can create a really nice sound. No rules, though.
Okay, I think that's all the questions we have.
Great questions.
I think everybody's really tracking. Everybody seems to be really excited about the course.
Cool.
I think it's one it looks like that people have been waiting for.
Yeah, well, good. Let's go. Let's briefly go through the last sequence because this is the last thing that you're going to be wanting to practice. So let's go to the tab. Okay, so this one is a little bit different. We go up 3 strings, then down 1, then up 3. And so here's what it's going to look like slow. Okay, then on the way down. Whole thing again slow, follow along with the tab. So you notice there's 3s over this. Da 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 da. It's this triplet feel. Da 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 da. So if we play that with the click, let's get that in our minds. Da 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 da. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 tripolit tripolit tripolit. there's some picking challenges there. Practicing and getting comfortable with that alternate picking is maybe a little bit of a task. There's nothing incredibly, difficult with any one section. It's just that you're doing this instead of just going straight up and straight down. Of course, being able to use legato in there a little bit, it's going to be key. That's a little more challenging there too, using some legato, but woodshedding it and practicing it up is going to make it real fun. Do that down again. So there is the last sequence, and you want to do the same thing with that sequence that we did with the other two tab ideas, and that is practice it at a bunch of different tempos. This one you're probably not going to be subdividing and doing, like playing at 16th note triplets or anything like that. You can just bump the speed up a little bit and practice playing it cleanly. But get good and comfortable with these sequences, because next week we break down the position 2 strings at a time, and we start making music in little tiny boxes. You've heard the phrase pentatonic boxes, so we're going to go over that concept a little bit more next week, and then take it to real music as soon as next week. So get comfortable with the scale, get comfortable with these sequences. Great questions, great interaction. That was a lot of fun. Are there any other questions before we're done?
I've got one more here. We'll sneak in before we're done.
Sure.
Could be a good one for people to understand. And the question is, how is this course compared to David Walliman's Pentatonic Mastery? What's the difference?
This course is a lot narrower and a lot more specific. Pentatonic Mastery dealt with, over the course of the 10 weeks, it dealt with all 5 positions and making music in different, licks and stuff like that within each of the 5 positions of the pentatonic scale. This is much more narrow. We're just dealing with one position. And so I would say that David's was more broad. I'd say more advanced in terms of covering the neck, but this course is going to, like I stated earlier, the focus of this course is not necessarily learning all the pentatonic scales up and down the neck. It's taking one position and squeezing the music and the opportunity out of it. So one could consider that this course, even though it's called Pentatonic Precision, would be a study in phrasing with the pentatonic scale. You could think of it that way.
Okay, that's all the questions that we have.
Cool. All right. Great session, guys. We'll see you next week for week 2.